All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Terminally Drunk, and tonight on episode 224, we'll be taking a look at the most recent news around Overwatch, its competitive scene, and so much more. So before we get into the news tonight and introduce you to my co-host, let me just quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Edinar and Ed. It is officially off season for the Overwatch League.
hmm
Quite a bit going on. We got a new patch, some interesting changes to Soldier 76. We had a new comic drop in late this afternoon that we'll probably talk about next week, so we can get like a deeper dive into that because there are some story developments on, kind of like the King's Row, Omni Crisis front on that end. But it seems like right now we're kind of like in F5 season, knowing that we have a lot of players announcing their free agency status, but we're still kind of waiting on this next week when we have the full listing for the spreadsheet, so we know everyone's status, which is already basically accessible to like all of the general managers out there. So it's not like that information isn't known on like the league office front there.
Yeah, we got confirmation that there is a spreadsheet, so we got that. We got confirmation there, but yeah, it's officially the off season. So let all the speculation begin, where we won't find out anything for a while. Like, I think we were all expecting it to be like last off season to be like, okay, day one when it's available, we'll hear all these changes.
Mm-hmm.
Like this person signed in with it, and then we waited 2 months to the beginning of December to find out who actually is going where. Like, so don't expect it like a flurry of like, oh my god, this person signed with them. They're signed here. They're signed here. Expect to see a lot of drops, but not a lot of signings announced at this point.
Right. I'm gonna adjust my camera really quick because it's bugging me knowing that it's like centered in one spot and then not on OBS. Gotta love that. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about what's been going on in the Overwatch League. Obviously, it was a pretty big weekend. Last week we kind of took the week off from this show because we did our network special for the grand finals, where we were kind of split in regards to who people believed would be the champions in 2020. Well, I am happy to say
I
one
was
of
right.
I'm happy to say that I backed the Shock. They won again. Uh
I mean, I don't want to call it dominant.
it wasn't dominant if you
It
compare it
wasn't dominant.
to last season. Last
It
season was
wasn't
dominant.
the only reason it wasn't dominant is because of the shock Shanghai matchup. I think like that is what prevented it from being dominant. I think if they would have won like 4-1 against Shanghai, it would have been a dominant performance.
Yeah,
But
it was an interesting weekend, and I will say, completely effing up my sleep schedule for like the entirety of the weekend before going back to work wasn't the best idea, but that's besides the point. But it was the Shock again taking home the trophy after a 4-2 series win in the grand finals over the unlikely challenger of the Seoul Dynasty. That team literally no one was looking at out of the final four. Outside of Booger, if only to like embrace the meme sake of the potential upset there. But this is the first time that we have seen a team winning two titles in a row, let alone, just winning two titles total in the Overwatch League. So, I have to say, like, seeing the Dynasty make it as far as they did, obviously, very proud moment for that team. It was something that a lot of people didn't think was even in their wheelhouse. And, despite that 50%, regular season winning record, they managed to basically take not only the San Francisco Shock, but also the Shanghai Dragons to 5 maps leading up to the grand finals themselves. And, they absolutely crushed the Philadelphia Fusion,
Oh God, that
as
was
did the
oh.
Dragons. But, and it's so funny because, people were trying to convince others about Philadelphia having that sort of super team presence about them. And, they tried to compare them directly to the San Francisco Shock. And, I understand wanting to feel that way. You look at the level of consistency that the Fusion had throughout the regular season, being, one of the winningest teams out there. But when we're talking about proven track records, when we're talking about the playoffs, Philadelphia has always had that problem keeping pace with some of the other elite teams in the Overwatch League, and they got absolutely shut out in the grand
Mhm.
finals this year, and it was not even close. They didn't have a single map win, and all season long, we kept hearing that discussion of, oh yeah, the Shanghai Dragons are, the best team in the league. A lot of people wanted to throw that narrative around, and come to find out, they didn't even make it into the actual grand finals after
Mhm.
dropping that series to the Dynasty. So I have to say, like, as a Dynasty fan, it was definitely a hype worthy moment. Like, I was talking to Slambo about it. I was like, hey, like, I don't know if you're watching right now, but we're going to a map 5, and whoever wins this goes on to the grand finals tomorrow. So he tuned in for that as soon as I mentioned it to him, and then he tuned in the next day. But for the Dynasty to be able to put themselves in that position in the first place really speaks volumes, because everyone was crapping on this team. No one wanted to give them their due. Everyone was talking crap about creative when you compare, their support line to basically all the others in the Final Four,
Mhm.
which I'll admit, I haven't been blown away by Toby or creative this season, but I felt like when all was said and done, you can't argue over the fact that the Dynasty really kind of paid their dues with the run that they had here.
Yeah. So I'll get to the dynasty in a second. I'm directing this solely at you, Fusion and Shanghai Dragons. Okay. There's one tried and true thing across sports, and I don't care about the meta at this point. I don't care about the meta when I say this. You play your best players. You play your stars. You play the people that have gotten you there. So the Fusion, when they lost to the Seoul Dynasty, they didn't play Carpe.
Mm-hmm.
When Shanghai lost to Seoul Dynasty, you didn't see Fleta. Like, Fleta's the MVP of the Overwatch League, and he didn't play in a winner take all match in the grand finals. Like, to me, that's insane. Like, I know sometimes the comps aren't benefiting, or this person might be slightly better on Hanzo on this map.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give two shits. You play your star players. And by not doing so, you are automatically not putting your best team forward. So that's just a mistake on their part. It 100% is, and no one will be able to talk me down from that. It's just, it's kind of like in baseball. Let's say baseball. Mike Trout, best baseball player in Major League Baseball, and well, he is 0.01% lower in the batting average against left-handed hitters in this situation. So we're gonna pull Mike Trout for the backup. No, you don't do that. So like that was just stupidity to a whole new level for me. So beyond that, the Seoul Dynasty. There is a football player. His name is Ryan Fitzpatrick. And his nickname is Ryan Fitzmagic.
mm-hmm.
I believe we have a new Fitzmagic on our hands. As much as people wanted to, as much as Profit popped the F off at times, Fitz did it. Fitz was like the deciding factor, I think, a lot of the times. Fitz and then Gesture, with the most aggressive Roadhog I've ever seen, and the most crazy flanks on King's Row that I've seen since the crazy ass stuff the Gladiators.
Oh
pulled.
yeah, with the Great Bamboozle, yeah.
The Great Bamboozle. Like, he's just like, I'm gonna just flank around you solo and dominate you. Like,
Mhm.
they're just like, yeah, no, we're gonna pick King's Row against Shanghai Dragons when it's their best map, and
Yeah, we're also
we're
gonna
gonna win.
take the Shock to one of their undefeated maps in Hanamura.
And Hanamura and win 18-0 to 18-1.
Mhm.
But like, they're just like, they come up with all these kooky strategies, and like, it was just the perfect meta for them with Prophet and Fitz, what they were able to do with the snipers. And then you had Gesture and was it Creative that was on the Ana?
Mhm.
I believe it was Creative. And the perfectly timed nanos on Gesture just to keep him alive. Because he would, like, that is what they were doing. They were just using that to keep Gesture alive when he'd go for some of the most insane, like, aggressive pushes I've seen. Like, Soul was super fun to watch, like crazy amounts of fun to watch. Way more fun than any of the other teams. They just weren't the best team. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, the Shock were just so darn good.
They were, and like really like looking back, I think the biggest takeaway, you know, regardless of like if you're comparing like line to line, I really do believe like one of the biggest difference makers between the Shock and literally everyone else was Moth, and the value that we were seeing out of Resurrect, because you know I know when they were going head to head with Toby, who was on a Mercy for Soul Dynasty, you know, despite having very similar, like, you know, death ratios on both sides, you had Moth getting like 10 more reses over the course, you know, of the series over Toby, where, you know, Moth was being heavily protected. The peel for the Shock was just absolutely insane. But, you know, it's things like that that are so crucial in the long run. But to see the dynasty just be able to kind of like continue this momentum that they've had, where you know we've seen like improvements from them on a season to season basis. So to see them go from like barely making the playoffs to all of a sudden finding themselves in the grand finals, like I don't know what that is going to mean for the next season, knowing that they did that off of a meta that was really good for them after a season that was kind of just like all over the place. So I don't know what to expect, but I was happy nonetheless. And congrats to the Shock on back-to-back championships. And you know they're gonna be looking for the three-peat. You know, I know there's been a lot of discussion about Moth's FA posts and what his status is going into the 2021 season, but you know we saw a lot of FA posts popping up super early, and there were a number of instances where those players had re-signed with the team that they were on that prior season. So do not be surprised if we see, I wouldn't necessarily say like a wholesale like re-signing of like the entirety of the team, but I would be absolutely floored if the Shock let more than like 2 people go in the off season.
I mean, here's the thing: is I could see them letting Violet go. I could, because you know, your backup is Twilight, who is not too shabby as a backup. You know what I mean? And if you're gonna, like, I'll flat out say this: Moth, and he won't get it. Moth probably at this point deserves to be one of the top 5 highest paid players in Overwatch League. Like, he is that critical. Like, he is that crucial to the team. And I mean, I don't think there's any question that he's the best main support in Overwatch. I can't think of anyone who is better than him on main support, and makes as big of an impact. So like, the Shock could pimp out a lot of money to Moth and let Violet go, but then you have Twilight, and it all depends on that. I mean, I don't think Striker and Ons is that unreasonable to bring back. Ons is basically on his first year, isn't he?
Yeah, he was just brought on this past season.
Yeah, he just brought on this past season, so his contract's not up. Striker, I don't know what Striker's contract is like, but you have Super Smurf and Choyobin, and I don't know. I would assume Super is actually under contract for one more year. But I think you have Super Smurf and Choyobin, which is very probably likely to come back. I see them losing some of their backups. I see them losing Rascal. If I was Rascal, I'd probably leave. Because you went from one of the stars of the team to not playing.
Yeah, well, we didn't really see like as many like map archetype specific compositions where they would basically have two DPS play in specific modes and then two DPS doing the other ones.
Mm-hmm. So the Shock definitely has a chance to come back ridiculously strong. The only thing would be is if they're very dangerously close to being all Korean.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just Super and Moth at this point. And I don't know if they want to go all Korean with Krusty, if Krusty has some sleepers up his sleeve. But the thing is in Krusty, we trusty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, any moves they make, whatever. If I was an opposing team, I'd do whatever I could to try and pry Moth away. Not so much Super. I am not a Super fan.
Well, I think Super on the Roadhog early on definitely struggled. As it got deeper into the playoffs, he was really starting to find himself in that case. But what I will say about like the Shock playoff run this year, the thing that really stood out obviously was the fact that they were building these early leads, only to drop the next two maps and then have to defend themselves from getting reverse swept on two different occasions. That happened back to back times.
So that actually, if you watch Ons, I think a lot of that falls on him.
Well, the first one definitely did. I didn't see as much like on and off again in that second series.
It's just I think the pressure got to him of like we're up 2-0, so he kind of let his guard down, and then they came back, and then he got into panic mode, and then he started to go downhill from there. And I don't think that's something that's gonna repeat itself next year. Like Ons is a superstar in this league. He's gonna be up there with the likes of some of the best sharpshooters in the game. He just he had to get over that first hurdle.
Yeah, and what's great about that too, Ed, is the fact that here you have a player who in Contenders Korea was disregarded a lot. Everyone just saw him as a streamer. He gets signed to the Overwatch League by the Shock. I remember like looking back when that announcement was happening, and a lot of people were just kind of like, well, is he even going to play? A lot of people didn't see the value that he would be bringing to the Shock during this season, and here we are entering playoff time, and he's in like in almost every single situation. So it was a nice redemption arc for him. And with that win, the Shock with the championship took home $1.5 million in pricing. You have $750K going over to the Dynasty. So maybe they'll use some of that money to entice Moth to stay with the Shock, but we'll see what happens on that front. But I want to talk about viewership that we saw in the grand finals. Obviously, it's kind of been all over the place this season, with the move over to YouTube. And, we got our viewership numbers on a YouTube side. We have the Chinese viewership. And, across the board, that finals between the Dynasty and the Shock was actually the most viewed match in Overwatch League history, with an average global audience of 1.55 million. So when you compare that to like last year's final with the Titans, that was a 38% increase. And YouTube got upwards of like 180,000 viewers, which was also a season high. And I know like there was like a number of times, like even when we got to like tournament situations where we were like floating around like 50,000 ish. maybe a little bit higher, but like it wasn't like astronomical numbers. So to see that sort of rebound when there were higher stakes was so nice to see. And you could talk about inflated China numbers, and yes, like they saw like a huge surge there as well of 266%. Like obviously a big chunk came from China for viewership, but
A big?
yeah,
A big
massive,
is
astronomical. It was
yeah,
1.39 million.
yeah, 1.39 million of the 1.55 million viewers were from China.
Yeah.
That's that's I mean these are these are the type of numbers you give to investors to make yourself look good and hope they don't look at the numbers closer.
Well, either way, like even if you compare like the percentage uptick, just on the YouTube side alone, it would still be around the same percentage.
Oh yeah, for YouTube, but what was the YouTube over Twitch last year?
That I don't know. I don't have that on hand.
Exactly. So it's like it was such an upgrade over YouTube from previous YouTube games, and this is the first year it was on YouTube, and YouTube viewership was shit this year
For the
compared to last year on Twitch because they didn't get any of the viewerships. It's just it was so massive in China, and that's the thing a lot of people don't get is people are like, oh, they have no viewers, this dying league. Well, you know what? China loves it. Like it's plain and simple. Like the best example I can get, World of Warcraft the movie.
Oh god.
Complete fucking box office disaster in the United States. Killed it over in China and Asia. Just killed it. To the point that they're in talks right now to make a second Warcraft movie because it was so good over there.
I don't want it.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it may not be the greatest thing over here, but China loved it. And here's the other thing, and this is a positive. I'll give the Overwatch League a positive in regards to all this. This also the playoff matches were going on at the same time as the League of Legends Worlds, where each match is getting 1.5 million viewers per match for qualifying games. Like, for starters, what the fuck, please? Like,
I mean, you're
like,
talking...
why are you scheduling it during League of Legends Worlds?
Yeah, only the biggest esports event of the year.
Yeah. There's only so many esports events in the year, and you're like, oh, it's a great time to do this during the biggest one of the entire year. It's like the XFL having their championship game the same weekend as the Super Bowl. Like, it's so they could have been higher, but yeah, they're gearing towards China because, like it shows, 1.39 of the 1.55 million viewers were from China.
Absolutely. All right, well, now that we are in the off season, I know a lot of people are wondering, well, what's the player status of everyone? We do know, thanks to John Spector, that next week we will be having a blog post highlighting all the contract statuses. So a couple of things to note here. As of October 12th, we have player trades opening up for league office approval. The next important date is October 16th, and that's when there's a deadline by which teams must exercise any options to extend existing contracts, which were initially executed in the 2020 season. So when we're talking about player movement so far, I want to go over what's actually known at this point, specifically when it comes to player releases. And there's only a handful. I know the Florida Mayhem had a lot of moves today, releasing Saya Player, who has actually rebranded himself and is now playing for T1 Valorant under Spider. You have their main support, Chris, main tank, Karayan, and flex support, Byram, all being released. For the Philadelphia Fusion, they released flex support, Boombox. Boston Uprising released one of their tanks, Mikey. as well as main support Halo. Dallas will release flex support Unko, who I believe is also pursuing Valorant.
He's going into Valorant.
And then on the Gladiators front, they release Jaru, the Finnish support duo of Shaz and Big Goose, as well as Bishu and LH Cloudy. So, obviously, we have some not so big surprises here. I think really the one that kind of caught me off guard, obviously, initially was the Gladiators with Shaz and Big Goose, just because, like, that's been a staple of that team since day one. I know initially I was like, okay, we've seen this, and then I go out inside another like Finnish support to make it a trio, and it was very bittersweet knowing like they won't do that again.
No. Nope. Shaz and Big Goose are gone, and this was the surprising one for me, because it's we have not shied away from it, but Shaz and Big Goose are one of the best support duos in the Overwatch League, and they just have been, and they're just tried and true. They're not going to be the ultimate end all be all support duo, but they're not going to be bad. They're not going to be detrimental to your team at all. Now it looks like Big Goose actually retired.
That is true.
From Overwatch, while Shaz is not. So I don't know what's going on with Shaz. Whether he tries to stick with Overwatch and go to another team, or if he tries to go to Valorant, because flex support actually translates over to Valorant fairly well. But yeah, this was definitely like the Gladiators are in full rebuild mode at this point. They got rid of 5 players. They have OGE, Space, Birdring, and Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. So like they have 4 players on their team, and it's gonna be an interesting offseason for the Gladiator fans.
Yeah, and I feel like too, like when you kind of like look back at the season, out of all the teams on here outside of Fusion, the Gladiators really had like set expectations to perform. This is a team who had basically finished in the top 8, both in the 2018 and the 2019 season. So they had been a bit more consistent, a bit more proven from top to bottom, and a lot of people really, it was reflective of like the management side of that organization. So like this was kind of like the first like letdown of a season that this team has had. And I'm sure maybe a lot of these players were actually like on those like 2-year contracts at this point. So we'll have to see where they're gonna go. I think Birdring definitely lived up to kind of like the hype or the expectations that were put upon him, because there were kind of
I would say Birdring actually exceeded expectations.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were like, well, is Birdring washed? Because, a lot of people figured like, Prophet was always going to be the better out of the duo, and Birdring was kind of like left off on his own in this case, and he really stepped up and showed his worth over the course of this season. So I don't know where to go from here. Obviously, we got a ton of questions. We have a really ominous tweet from the Outlaws earlier this evening with some of their other players announcing that their team options haven't been picked up. But, we're kind of going to wait until, we get that blog post this next week before we have, like, a bigger understanding of the picture. Because right now, obviously, a lot of people are out there speculating about, what contract statuses are for everyone. And we don't quite have all of the information right now, but we will probably within like the next 4 or 5 days. So yes. I cannot wait to have a deeper dive into that side, and then we can kind of like start to go over like team needs, or who would be a good fit elsewhere, things like that.
Yeah. No, that's definitely going to be an episode right there.
All right, so there was something else that happened on the esports front, but I want to kind of save that for next week as its own discussion, because there was this idea proposed for the Overwatch League for the 2021 season involving APAC as a region specifically. That has definitely raised a lot of eyebrows. And, general consensus right now kind of seems like, oh, well, they're just like throwing ideas at the wall. But we'll talk about that next week. But I'll definitely link it in the Discord if you guys want to take a look at that. But let's talk about what's going on within Overwatch. So, Overwatch is actually celebrating an anniversary in regards to the Nintendo Switch release of the game. And to celebrate, Nintendo has are doing right now a free-to-play week on Nintendo Switch. So this will be running until October 20th. And, obviously, you need the Switch Online service, which, if you don't have it, you can get a free trial, which is also a week. Otherwise, I think the cost is, $3.99. It's super cheap compared to, some of the other options out there. But what I thought was interesting about this, Ed, and I don't have a second Switch, so I can't, check this out. Nintendo was actually advertising this as, the full experience of the game. So as you know, in the past, when Overwatch had been doing free-to-play weekends, they basically limited it to quick play. There was a level cap. You couldn't queue for competitive. And then, if you were to pick up the game, you could carry over any sort of progression. So I don't know if that means on Switch this week, it's actually everything is included, or if it's the same limitations of what we saw prior.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another. To me, I read this and I'm just like, this is just another teaser of them going free to play.
Mm-hmm.
It's the next logical step for Overwatch. Is the game goes free to play? Because at this point, you're not selling many new copies of Overwatch.
Right.
So now your best bet is to make it free to play, and then try and up the cosmetic game, and then wait for Overwatch 2 to come out. So, yeah, I mean, it's cool. I think it's nice. It's on the Switch. I think the Switch release probably backfired on them a little. They didn't get the number of continuous players, but again, it's a shooter game on Switch, and that's never gonna really be a thing.
Yeah, realistically, the only... I wouldn't even know if I would classify it as a shooter, but, Splatoon had always kind of been the only one within that sort of market, really, on that platform.
Yeah. I guess. Is Splatoon that even still around?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. The more you
know.
know.
I don't know how big it is, but, there was definitely an esports scene for it. But that's besides the point. But anyways, guys, obviously the big news this week on the Overwatch front is a patch that dropped yesterday. That would be October 13th. So, we've talked about a lot of the stuff that is in this patch already. This is one that has the profanity filter improvements that I believe we had talked about on our prior episode. It also has, the elevator improvements for Hollywood as well as Volskaya. So, just as a general recap here, we have profanity filter system improvements that are more comprehensive and customizable. You have 3 levels of chat filter to choose from, which can also sort of be adjusted whether you're in a team or in a party. The elevators now wait at the bottom of their loop for player interaction instead of just lowering and rising in sequence. So when an elevator hits the top, it will pause briefly before it starts going back down. But otherwise, if no one is around, it will be waiting at the bottom for someone to step on it. Now, Ed, we do have a few hero changes. One of which was actually on the experimental card during our off week. So this is something that we haven't been able to talk about yet, and it's in regards to Soldier 76. So some interesting changes here. They removed the bullet spread. They have added constant recoil because of this. So we also saw tweaks to bullet damage, going from 20 now down to 19. But then they also increase his ammo count up from 25, and now it's at 30.
Mm-hmm.
So, for a while there, when we're talking about hit scan within the game, Soldier was essentially playing like fourth fiddle to like
Yes.
Hanzo, McCree, Widowmaker, Ash. Like, Soldier just
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have a spot in that sort of role, and now they've kind of like honed him back to being a more traditional like FPS hero.
Yes.
And I haven't been able to play around with this too much outside of Drunken Science Revenge, which is not a good indicator of where he
It is
is right
not.
now. I will say though that they're trying to like shy away from that old usage of like burst damage in regards to like doing 3-shot burst and not
Mm-hmm.
going full auto, because that was always a detriment in the past for Soldier 76. So there's definitely a lot in regards to like muscle memory
Yep.
adjustments that are going to need to be made by players right now. So, I feel like right now I'm at this point where I don't have a good read on this as of yet because I haven't played it enough. But I feel like the amount of time it's going to take to adjust isn't going to be as bad as people are kind of suggesting it to be at this point.
Okay. So here's my thoughts on this. I think this is a great change. Okay. It makes Soldier 76 so much better. But it's also horrible. and I know it's contradicted. So okay. So here's my reasoning behind all of this. At higher ranks, you want and more skilled aimers, recoil is 10 times better than bullet spread.
Mhm.
10 times better, if not more than that. Like this is amazing for people who can control it, can control the recoil and still aim while doing that. So from the higher, what we're going to see is at the higher levels, we're going to see a lot more soldier play. And rightfully so, because soldier will be super strong. But what that will mean is the lower end players will see that and play soldier because that's the meta, and they won't be even remotely close to as good. Like they are at lower level, the bullet spread is better than the recoil for a lot of the 2500 and below. It just is. It's because they're not used to dealing with recoil or anything like that, and they don't have the skill to do it. I'm one of them. Like I'll flat out say this. Like yes, I'm used to recoil, but I've played soldier a few times now in quick play, and it feels a lot different.
Mhm.
And to me, I'm not as good as controlling recoil as most people, and it's detrimental to me. Like so it's great and it's bad at the same time. It's gonna create this division of, you're gonna have. I hate to say this, it's the skill cap for soldier, who used to be the like, if all else fails, take the basic ass freaking hero.
He's like cookie
Uh,
cutter hero.
yeah, he's a cookie cutter DPS in the game, and now you're introducing the skill gap of the recoil, and there's going to be a pretty big skill cap for it. So it's going to be interesting to see how they balance this going forward. I do think it's a good change.
Mhm.
I do 100% think it's a very good change. And I would prefer they do this than just buff it. You power creep soldier to the point where his utility is kind of crap, but he's so powerful you just have to play him type of like mentality.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think with the changes to, especially with no double shields really going on right now, and you have the Roadhog Sigma meta, I think Soldier 76 is going to be pretty dominant.
Right on.
So
I can't wait to mess around with it a bit more. Outside of that, there's most of the other hero changes that we see here are more quality of life based. They did add a new allied voice line for Reinhardt whenever he uses his Earth Shatter. They improved smoothness of first-person camera for Sombra when you were translocated a short distance to a translocator that's in your view. We also see some like grappling changes for Widowmaker and Wrecking Ball. So with Widow, the grappling hook will now bounce off of a surface if the distance between you and the hook is under 2 meters, canceling the hook and not costing a cooldown. With Wrecking Ball, the claw will earn improved target detection to help with the consistency of connecting to walls. You know, like I don't really play a ton of these heroes, so I don't know like how massive these changes are going to be. You know, the Reinhardt one, you know, that's fine. You know, we do see a lot of like voice lines when it comes to like the ultimates, so knowing whether or not it's yours or your opponent's, you know, is always going to be a big deal. But like I can't really imagine a situation in the past where I've been like, I hear Reinhardt shouted, and then my memory is just like, oh, I better move just in case. Because it's already in a different language as it is to begin with, if it is an enemy one.
Yeah, that's not a buff or anything like that. It's just, yeah, it's just, that's almost like it should be just under bug fixes.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, they're just trying to make sure Darren DePaul is still keeping busy.
Yeah. Although he is big into, like, every video game franchise.
Oh, yeah. Big time. All right, so elsewhere, really not a whole lot else with this patch outside of the event, which, of course, will be talked about here. We do have a 3rd season of competitive team deathmatch underway. So again, you know, quick way to get competitive points. You can get a new spray as well with that. I don't think you and I will ever be playing that, but, you know, it's there for people that want to be playing it. But obviously, the big thing this week, guys, Halloween terror is upon us. All right, so we got the event.
With new modes.
Yes! I cannot... All right, well, we'll get to that in a second. But anyways... Halloween event happening between now until November 3rd. We have the return of weekly challenges. So the epic skins for the event are tied to that, as well as a couple of sprays, some player icons. So this current week, we have the Phantasma Sombra. Week 2 is Stone Brigitte, and then week 3 is Ragdoll Echo. Alright, so looking at these skins, Ed, you know, they're epic. You know, I really didn't know what to expect for Echo, and my god, that thing is legit horrifying when you compare it to, like, the traditional, like, Halloween skins that we get for Overwatch. It completely caught me off guard. You know, you have that burlap textured skin, you know, you got the evil button eye, and, like, I saw that, and you know, as someone that's really into horror, I was just like, you know what? Like, I dig this. But I know a lot of people are going to look at this and absolutely hate it. You're muted, by the way.
Of the 3 skins that you could earn by wins, and mind you, this is the easiest time to ever get 9 wins.
Oh, yeah.
Because all you need to do is do 9 regular Junkenstein's Revenge, and you have it. Plain and simple. The first 2 skins, the you know, are trash. They're throwaways. You add them to say you have them, but you'll never actually equip. This Echo one, I think it might even have to do with the lack of actual skins for her, for Echo. That it's just so good, and it's legit scary. It's so good. This should have been a legendary. Like, they should have made this a legendary and made one of the other ones an epic skin.
Okay.
So I'm very happy that they made it epic skin, and it's going to be very easy to get. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't seen the other epic skins, the Phantasma Somber one kind of like gives her like this ghoulish overhaul. She has a lot of like teal in regards to like her hair and her like outfit detailing. What I really like about this though is like her jacket, because on the back you kind of like see these pixels that are like disappearing as if she's like fading away essentially, which I thought was a very nice touch. The Brigida one is okay. It kind of has like that stone magma tinge to it. Kind of like reminiscent of like if a statue was like coming to life, like a gargoyle, I guess would be the best way to
Hmm.
put it. But really, obviously, with this event, we got to talk about Junkenstein's Revenge. Now, we do have a couple of changes here, which is actually something we don't always get. They did add Ash and Baptiste to character select for the standard mode. And as you had previously mentioned, we do have challenge missions that have been added to this. So the challenges themselves add unique buffs to either the enemies or the players. And, I haven't gone through like the entirety of the list. I know right now there is the Vengeful Ghost challenge, which basically like will send a ghost chasing after players after you defeat enemies. So a lot of moving around. Like when I was doing my run, I was Soldier 76 earlier. I did the challenge one with him. So there were times when I was holding like the left top, and then whenever I was being
Okay.
chased, I would essentially just drop down from the high ground. I would, just Helix Rocket, whatever was in the middle. I'd sprint back up to the high ground, and I would just keep looping kind of like back and forth. Um, so I don't think like it outright kills you. I'm assuming it just hits you when it, does massive damage, but it wasn't to the point where I couldn't really create any sort of separation between myself and the vengeful spirit in this case. One of the other ones that kind of caught my eye too was Three They Were, which actually reduces the party size down to three, but in doing so, it also boosts your player damage. So I'm assuming with that, like Torbjorn would probably be a necessity since, initially right now, like you could basically like leave the turret to like cover the right or the left spawns.
Hmm.
And then, you have another DPS and, one support because you're probably still going to need it in that case. But I at least like to see, we're not used to seeing new additions
Yes.
to events. So this is a nice change of pace. I don't know how difficult all of them are going to be, but it's ways to not only have additional wins towards your weekly challenges, but they do also offer bonus loot boxes for the challenges as well in this case.
Hmm. So yeah, no, I actually tried the one where the whatever ghouls, whatever they're called, uh, are faster, and that one actually is pretty hard. Now, I will say it was pretty hard because we had somebody pick Torbjorn and was a complete and utter moron,
Hmm.
and put their turret up in the middle, like not back towards the door, up the middle to cover the middle door, and not
Like
cover it.
beyond the like equipment boxes?
Yep,
Okay.
and refused to move it. So it's like, oh come on, dude. Like,
That's a terrible
and it
line of
was
sight.
me. Like I was Soldier. We had a Baptiste who was not healing, and a Hanzo. And the Hanzo wouldn't move from the top left spot. So I'm like, oh, this is just horrible. Um, but yeah, no, it's surprising. The thing is during that fast one, when the bosses come out, they do some damage to the door. That's the key. Is like they do a
Okay.
lot of damage to the door because you're concentrating on the boss and not on all the other ads
Hmm.
that are doing damage. But yeah, it's nice to see all these changes. They did a great job with the skins. As much as I freaking hate Halloween, they did a great job with the skins. I'm glad to see some differences in Junkenstein's Revenge. Um, Hopefully, this means a thing. Like they're going to be adjusting some of the future, like challenges when it comes to events and stuff like that. So but yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. I've definitely played a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, so, with any event, we gotta talk cosmetics.
Yes.
So with this, we have 5 new legendary skins. We have a new emote, 3 new victory poses, which again are pumpkin themed. We have
Mhm.
2 new highlight intros, and of course several new voice lines and sprays. So I want to talk about the voice lines. So there's a couple of standouts for me. Ash has one where she's like retelling this like this ghost story of like the outlaw's ghost. I really like that one. Anna has a "Listen to Your Mummy" one, which is a perfect tie-in to her Universal Monster skin from the prior Halloween event. And Echo has one that you guys need to buy, especially if you're wearing the Ragdoll one, where she's like, like there are spirits living within me, and the way that she says it is like so chillin'. But above all else, the real winner out of like this entire event is the Dalek Orisa exterminate line. When I saw that, I lost it.
Yeah, I mean they have some good voice lines. I've never been a big voice line person in Overwatch just because I like to hear the actual banter back and forth
Hmm.
that isn't like you pressing a button. Um but yeah, Exterminate's a good one. I'm sure I got it. I just haven't realized it.
Hmm.
But, I'm glad they're still pumping out some of those. At least they're pumping out something.
Yeah, so the new highlight intros are for Pharah and Widowmaker. The Pharah one basically has Pharah like going up into the sky and smashing a pumpkin with her concussive blast. Widow is of course like spider based, so you see a Black Widow kind of like dropping down from its web, lands into her head, and like crawls up her arm and like rests on her shoulder. That one's okay. So not really like blown away by either of those. The victory poses are for Ash, Baptiste, and Echo. It's understandable, like because Ash and Baptiste were literally just added to the event, so that was a good
Mhm.
tie-in there. The Reinhardt zombie walk was pretty interesting.
No.
It The thing that caught me off guard though with that one is just the fact that he's still like holding onto his weapon and like dragging it behind him, which was kind of off-putting because you wouldn't see that in like a zombie movie. That's more like a Resident Evil or Silent Hill type move.
Okay. So this Reinhardt zombie one actually freaking triggered me. Okay. For starters, they already have a Halloween Reinhardt emote.
Okay.
Secondly, they already have a zombie walk emote out there. And they basically just copy pasted it from Bastion over to Reinhardt. And it's the exact same thing.
Okay.
So they just recycled an old emote and gave it to Reinhardt, but Reinhardt already had the pumpkin smash emote. Like that's just lazy to me. As far as the intros go, the fair one I can give two craps about. The Widowmaker one, the Itsy Bitsy Spider, and I get why they couldn't do it for contractual reasons or licensing. But if they could have gotten her to like say like Itsy Bitsy Spider in a very creepy tone as the spider's crawling up her arm,
Mm-hmm.
would have made it a billion times better.
Yeah.
But it never would have happened. But yeah, no, the intros, meh. The emote, hell no. But let's talk about the main one,
The skins?
the skins.
All right. You're only saying that because there's like a bunch of like Korean and Japanese names on here, and you're just waiting for me to butcher them all.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'll
All
take
right.
Winston's and Sigmas if
Yeah.
you take the rest.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You do that. Go ahead. Start us off.
All right, so let's start off with the actual first cool Sigma skin we've ever gotten in the game, and that is the Flying Dutchman,
The SpongeBob skin.
the SpongeBob skin. And like my favorite part about this skin is the fact that his balls are
Mhm.
actual sea urchins,
They are. Yeah.
and I have the gold weapon for for Sigma, and so I have golden sea urchins. So this is my favorite one. This is my favorite skin, but I love playing Sigma, so that's beyond the point. Though the werewolf Winston, I think is crazy overrated. Like, of the 5 new skins, I actually put werewolf Winston at the bottom.
Here's my thing with this one, Ed. The whole reason why Werewolf Winston exists is specifically only to be able to have the Universal Monster Party of 6 players, which we can now do with the addition of this, which is also 222. Like, that's the only reason why it's here.
I guess. But, like, Yeti Winston is just, like, such a better, like monster, I guess.
Well, it's like,
for Winston.
It's like when... okay, so I'm gonna use a Warcraft thing here. It's
All right,
basically... Okay, so it's like when, like, a Worgen druid turns into a cat. Like, it's already a fur baby turned into another fur thing, and this is no different, essentially.
I completely agree. So, like, the werewolf Winston is pretty... Honestly, they should have flip-flopped the Ragdoll Echo with the werewolf Winston. Like, the werewolf Winston should have been one of the epics that you get, and the Ragdoll Echo should have been a legendary.
And yes, Spider, I am a Worgen druid. That's why I said it. But I'm not a cat or a bear. I'm a tree.
You got to go Kulturas.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be the fat guy. I modeled him after myself. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go and make him bald with a beard in the pre-patch expansion, just so like I can be like, look, I made myself.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, when I saw the Sigma skin, obviously the first thing I'm thinking of is SpongeBob, and I'm sure that's gonna be the case for a lot of people. But if you guys don't know the story of the Flying Dutchman, it's essentially like a ghost story about this ghost ship said to like never be able to make it back to port. And it does have like that ominous green glow to it. The other ones that we got, you have the Genji and Hanzo skins, which are tie-ins to one another based off of Japanese folklore. You have the Dai Tengu, which is kind of like... I'm trying to think what this is based on. So you have one that's like the Spirit Crow for Genji, which is the Karasu Tengu. And then you have the Hanzo one, which is like based off of like greater divine lore. So you have the Crow, and then you have Hanzo's version. And I don't know too much about these, but the one that really caught me off guard, that I was like, oh, like this... I immediately logged in and bought this one. Was the Shinryon Diva skin, which is a Spirit Fox, which is essentially like a Ghost Ninetales. I saw that, I was like, I need this one. And you kind of have like that haunted house-esque look for her mech, which is fantastic. So that one was an instant purchase for me and a lot of other people as well. But I was kind of digging like the crow, like the Spirit Crow for Genji, but like I don't play Genji enough to like really want to be like, oh, like I need to have this one, or to like actually go out of my way to buy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, of the 3 that you mentioned, I think the Genji one is probably the coolest looking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like, here's the thing with I'll flat out say this: I don't watch any form of anime and never have, so like all these references you're making, no idea what you're talking about. So the Diva one, not that cool to me. I mean, it's cool, but not like insta buy. I'd rather have the Genji one over the Diva one.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't play Genji.
Right.
So that's the crappy thing. The Hanzo one is okay. Nothing too special. The Diva one, I will say, is pretty cool. It's just, I don't know what it would do. Like, I would equip it until I find a cooler Diva skin. Like, if they release a Christmas Diva skin, I'd replace it instantly. So,
well, I mean, that would be true for like a lot of skins.
That would be true for like everyone. But I mean, outside of the Winston werewolf, I think they really did well with the skins this year. They stepped up their skin game. So, the Flying Dutchman it's the one I'm gonna buy if I don't get it by the end of this. If I don't get any of the other ones, there's no other ones that I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna buy this if I don't get it.
Absolutely.
Flying Dutchman is the only one that I will.
Yeah, and before the event is over, I definitely want to go back and make sure we knock out all of the challenges. Because I'm pretty sure like they'll basically just unlock 2 new ones each week, but they'll still keep the prior ones active in that menu for you to play through to get the achievements and whatnot. But yeah, that's basically all the cosmetic stuff. Again, guys, make sure you log in, get your like free loot box, open that, and knock out the weekly challenges, which go very quick, especially in normal Junkensteins. Since that very, very easy and a lot quicker than just doing
go
really
normal
any other mode.
Junkenstein, pick Torbjorn, go AFK.
Place turret in like a good spot, then go.
Yeah, as long as your turret's like in a good spot, basically like right in front of the door. Put it, and just go AFK.
Yeah, there you go.
Like that's all you need to do.
But anyways, that's basically it for this week. We'll probably be back next week talking about the second London Call-In Tracer comic that just came out earlier this afternoon. And I want to deep dive more into the Tier 2 talk that has kind of been going on in regards to proposed 2021 Overwatch League changes, as well as contender stuff coming to Overwatch. Because there's been some stuff popping. There's been stuff popping up that's actually in game right now that's just not unlocked. So who knows? I don't know what to expect. But the contenders like social media account has actually been active, so we'll see what happens. Either way, I'm curious to see what's gonna come from that, if anything. But let's close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, please do us a favor and head on over to iTunes and write us a review. Let us know how we're doing. We're always looking for ways to improve the show. If you would like to show some support directly to our podcast, as well as the podcast network that we are a part of, consider pledging to our Patreon, where we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. You can find more info at patreon.com/OWL network. So you too can join the likes of our Master and Above patrons, Daniel, Owl, and Kesha, in helping our network grow. Now, outside of that, of course, there are a number of different ways how you guys can contact us. So, Ed, please let our listeners know how they can do just that.
All right, so you can reach us through email, and that's at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. We are on Twitter, and that's at hndoverwatch. We do have a website. You can reach us at owrecall.com. We are on YouTube at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. We do have a Discord channel at discord.me/OWLN show. And we are streaming presently live on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN show. We are a Twitch affiliate, so help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. Our podcast network does stream pretty regularly. So on Mondays, we have the Overwatch League Network at 6 p.m. Pacific. On Tuesdays, we do not have OWL by the numbers because it's off season. So that will come back next season. But on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, we have this show, Heroes Never Die. And then on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, we have Tavern Tales, a Hearthstone Battlegrounds podcast, which is streamed over at twitch.tv/TavernTalesHS. That I think we will be moving to a different day because we will be raiding in World of Warcraft Shadowlands together, even.
As druids.
Because Totem's going to let me die because he's healing and I'm damaged. And he's just going to be like, fuck that Ednar guy. I'm going to let him die and heal anyone else.
Yeah, see, regardless of how big the raid size fluctuates, that will be the one constant.
Is you just letting me die? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate it. So you can reach me personally over on Twitter, and that's at Ednar83, or on Twitch at twitch.tv/Ednar. Totem, where can they find you at?
Well, you can find me over on Twitter at TerminallyDrunk, as well as Twitch at twitch.tv/TerminallyDrunk, where you can primarily find me basically just playing through Hearthstone Battlegrounds and trying to get my rating back since before the reset. But anyways, guys, thank you again so much for joining us tonight for another episode of Heroes Never Die. You guys enjoy your weeks. Go play the Halloween event, and we will see you guys back here next week. You take care, and have a good night.